I just had this feeling like this isn't right. Like what I'm doing with food isn't right. And most of all, like I don't want to live like this. I don't want my life to continue to get more overwhelming and more stressful. And I don't want my relationship with food to be the way that I cope with that.
Welcome to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast, where you will learn how to remix your mompreneur life so that you can win at work without losing yourself in the process. Hi, my name is Martine Williams, and I am your host and CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And this podcast is your one-stop shop to creating a burnout-proof life and business and elevating your clarity, confidence, and courage. Friends, it's time to say goodbye to being the yes girl and hello to creating healthy boundaries, healthy mindsets, and healthy habits. Your next breakthrough starts here. This is the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. Let's do this. Hey friends, today's topic is something we haven't really covered in depth on the podcast before, but I'm really excited to have my Turquoise Talk guest, Jessica Procini, come on and talk about emotional eating. Now, whether you know you're an emotional eater, or maybe you're in denial that you're an emotional eater, or you're not even sure what this is, this podcast is going to be really, really great for you. So we talk about emotional eating and we go into detail on that and her journey, but we also talk about things like commitment. She talks about unconditional commitment versus conditional commitment. She talks about habits, how to create new habits and some boundaries. So don't skip this episode just because this topic may not apply to you, because I know the things that we talked about will. The meat and potatoes of what we talk about, you can apply to different areas of your life. So let me tell you a little bit about Jessica. She is a woman on a mission. She's the founder and leader of Escape from Emotional Eating since 2011. She has been helping women who strive for excellence heal the roots of their emotional eating so they can embody their full potential. She created Escape from Emotional Eating, which is a unique process grounded in a decade of research, a background in psychology of eating, and transformational coaching methods. But it's her own personal emotional eating journey and experience that makes her work stand out from the rest. And she goes into detail. She's so vulnerable in sharing her journey with you. And I know that you'll resonate with this. So let's get to it. Well, hey friends, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited about today's Turquoise Talk guest, Jessica Procini. Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. So I think before we dive into the topic, which I think is such an important topic, I don't think we can talk about it enough. I'd love to just hear more about you, your family, your journey, how you got into the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Jessica Procini, the founder and leader of Escape from Emotional Eating. I currently live in Philadelphia with my husband and my 2 rescue dogs, and I am deeply devoted and super passionate about the work that I do. But the truth is that I kind of fell into it. For many, many years, I didn't know I was an emotional eater, because I didn't have hundreds of pounds to lose. And I had the typical stereotype in my mind that if you're an emotional eater, you're able to eat like 10 bags of potato chips. And that was never really my experience. But I did have this thing with granola, and granola being a seemingly healthy food, I didn't really think there was anything quote unquote bad about it. But I did notice that I could eat a bag in a matter of seconds. It was almost like I would enter this food trance where I was just putting more and more into my mouth. And it wasn't until my hand hit the bottom of the bag that I would just like wake up and be like, whoa, what just happened? And kind of had this feeling of like something had taken over my body and I wasn't really in control. And as time went on, I realized that this didn't feel normal. Even though a lot of people that I talked to or tried to kind of express some of what was going on in my relationship with food, I was kind of just sloughed off. Like, oh, everybody does that. Oh, come on. Yeah, I did that last night. Or It was kind
Mm-hmm.
of just, I would say it was kind of gaslit around it.
Yeah.
And in a valiant effort to try to create the peace and freedom I want, I really sought the traditional answers of like eat healthier, work out more, which led
Mm-hmm.
me to going back to school for nutrition, which only made my emotional eating 10 times worse. And I didn't find the answers to my
Mm-hmm.
issues there. So then I decided, well, I'll just make working out my job and I'll just work out all the time. And that
Right.
that will bring the freedom and the control that I'm seeking. Well, same thing is like my emotional eating just got worse. And it was when I was really burnt out and exhausted and really frustrated that I started to realize, wait a second, food and fitness is not bringing me the peace and the freedom that I want. What is really going on here? And at first, that question really spooked me
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't really know what the answer was at the time. But there was this kind of internal sense. Now I call it like my intuition, but I just had this feeling like this isn't right. Like what I'm doing with food isn't right. And most of all, like I don't want to live like this. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want my life to continue to get more overwhelming and more stressful. And I don't want my relationship with food to be the way that I cope with that.
Yeah.
So that was when I kind of started to put some pieces together and realize like, oh my gosh, I'm using food to cope. I'm an emotional eater. That's what that is actually called. And I don't have to have hundreds of pounds to lose to be out of alignment in my relationship with food. And that was a real pivotal moment because that's when I started to slowly, baby steply, started
Mm-hmm.
to like reclaim my power and agency around my relationship with food. Because everywhere I looked outside of myself, I was just told that I wasn't trying hard enough, or I wasn't doing it right, or I wasn't perfect enough. And it just really brought a lot of disappointment. So I
Mm-hmm.
started to really look within for answers and put one foot in front of the other. And then, fast forward to today, I think it's been since 2017 that
Mm-hmm.
I last had an emotional eating experience. I remember that was the last time I used food to
Mm-hmm.
cope.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very different experience where I had this moment where I was in that food trance and I woke up in the middle of it and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I put the food back.
Mm-hmm.
And that to anyone who's ever felt out of control in their relationship with food, that is like a breakthrough
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
in the midst of to like awaken and put the
Mm-hmm.
food back. So now, 2024, I eat when I'm hungry. I stop when I'm full. My relationship with food is so simple compared to like the chaos I experienced before. Food, I see it as like an asset, especially when life gets busy. It's like, how can I use food to support me to
Yeah.
get through this busy time instead of the conventional thinking of, oh, let me use food as a reward or a comfort. I
Mm-hmm.
use it as an asset, a tool to show up for my life. And from there, as I started to, really step into my own healing, people just started coming out of the woodwork and being
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? You look amazing. You look so happy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not cranky. Like, what are you doing? And I just started to share like, well, I'm an emotional eater and I've really been, finding freedom from it. And this is what I've been doing. And that's honestly how this now business and program, Escape from Emotional Eating, came to be. So all that to say, it's brought me to my work today, and I bring now my professional expertise of coaching and nutrition and the psychology of eating. And I pair it with having lived and breathed and
Mm-hmm.
walked this journey and know it inside and out, and upside
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
And I bring both of that to the table. And I really believe that that's what makes such a difference in my work with my clients.
Yeah. Yeah, because no one better than someone who's been through it, right? It's really hard to relate to someone like I haven't been on your journey. I've been on a journey, but I haven't been on your journey, right? And so for you,
Hmm.
for someone to be like, "Oh, she gets me. Oh, she understands like every facet of this coping mechanism that I have or why I'm doing the things that I'm doing." It first of all, I think you probably just help people feel seen,
Yeah.
and that's the first step. Like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, cause you mentioned that, like, I felt like I was the only one and everybody was telling me, oh, just to work harder or, do more, when really
Right.
it takes the slowdown to have the self-awareness around what's really going on with my
Yeah.
relationship with food. And you can insert anything. What's going on with my relationship with my work? What's going on with my relationship with a substance? What's going on with my relationship with, you know, a spouse or whatever? Like you could insert anything in there, right?
Right.
As a coping
Yeah.
mechanism. And we all have different ways to cope. A mentor said to me the other day that we all have an addiction to relief. Like we all have it.
Yeah. It's
And
human.
so, right. And so, like, what is the thing that you go to get that relief? And what's your relationship with that? So, for someone who's listening, like, I think we say emotional eating a lot, but how would you define it? Could you give us, like, just a really clear definition of what emotional eating really is? And how do you know you're doing it?
Yeah. So emotional eating, just as a real simplified definition, is using food to cope.
Okay.
When we're using food to either change how we feel or not feel feelings that we're feeling. In other words, if you're eating when you're stressed, you're eating when you're anxious, you're eating when you're overwhelmed, you're eating when you're at a party and you actually shouldn't have even showed up, right? Like it can show up in those experiences as well. So the symptoms of emotional eating show up very differently for each person. So it's
Okay.
kind of hard to put it into one particular box. But what's really at the core is a behavior that disconnects you from your true authentic self. It's what, like, quite honestly, removes you from your true authentic self. And what happens is when emotional eating starts to become a pattern, it starts to
Mm-hmm.
show up more frequently, is then we're just living in a perpetual place where we're not our authentic selves, where we might have one version of ourselves that exists on the inside, but the actions we're taking, the behaviors that we're doing on the outside are very, very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And that dissonance, that disconnect really can actually create a lot of tension between a person on a psychological level and then can just wreak more havoc because we aren't always taught how to deal with tension in a healthy way. So also, that just got very like esoteric, but let me back it up and say that it doesn't matter how many cookies you eat. It doesn't matter if we're talking cookies or carrot sticks.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what creates emotional eating. Emotional eating has to do with why are you driven to eat and are you even physically hungry?
Yeah.
Because a lot of emotional eating, especially the self-destructive kind, happens as like force feeding yourself. It happens when we're overriding or not even in touch with our natural satiation. It
Mm-hmm.
happens as a more
Mm-hmm.
kind of compulsion. It's really a compulsion and it can make us feel very out of control. So those are some of the signs and symptoms and even the deeper aspects of emotional eating.
Yeah. When I first, not first heard about it, but when I was in a group or something and it came up quite a bit. And one of the things that they said that as a parent, as a mom of two, they're 16 and 19 now, but I remember them saying like, it's food is all around us and we use it as a celebratory tool as well, right? Like I remember
Hmm.
growing up and it was like, oh, you got an A on a test, let's go get some cake, or you got this. And it's all done not maliciously, right? Like
Right.
it's just what we've been, just what we've done. But it helped me to see the connection that you can easily make with the
Hmm.
food. And I use food to celebrate, or I use food when, like when my, son's having a bad day. Oh, let's go get some ice cream. That'll make him feel better. Right. Like it seems so not bad, when you look at it from that perspective, but when you truly understand the messaging that you're maybe sending the subconscious or the conscious mind, it is this, well, food's going to make me feel better. So let me go eat a whole pizza or let me go eat a slice of pizza. And it's just being more aware of that as a parent, but also being aware of that. And am I doing that myself?
Right. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with, going to get ice cream to celebrate or having a particular intention
Mm-hmm.
around like a food experience. It's all the stuff that's not being addressed as a part of that food experience. So you use the example of like your son and having a bad day. Well, it's okay to go get ice cream, but we want to make sure that we're talking about the feelings that he's feeling, and we're talking about how bad days happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that we can build resilience, and even supporting children or even supporting adults in what does that look like,
Mm-hmm.
so that we're not just kind of engaging in this behavior that shuts a lot of that healthy conversation down. And for women who are, in a leadership role, whether that leadership role is in family or business or wherever it is in their life, we have to be the ones to build those emotional muscles, those
Mm-hmm.
emotional fitness for resilience that doesn't involve seeking something outside of ourselves. So, what I teach my clients is number one, that we have emotional needs, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
probably in the ice cream example, it's like a need for comfort or a
Mm-hmm.
need for a shift in energy. And what I do with my clients is teach them tools on how to do that by themselves without seeking something outside of themselves. So I teach them tools like digesting emotions so
Mm-hmm.
that if they're having a bad day, they're able to move through it and then actually just go enjoy ice cream for it being yummy and good and being able to like stop when they're full and it not be this whole, oh my gosh, now I ate ice cream and I can't believe
Mm.
I did that. I have a bellyache and I have diarrhea and I'm up all night and I'm not going to be able to sleep. That's where the
Yeah.
ice cream is no longer ice cream. It's like a torture device.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like we got to be having more than just here's some ice cream. We got to be doing some of the deeper work.
Yeah. And I know there's someone listening who is kind of in that, maybe that cycle. And there's a lot of shame and embarrassment, right? When we start noticing these behaviors that we're doing that are self-inflicted, or, I've had a couple of clients that'll say things like, I'm a grown woman. I should just be able to pull myself out of this or just stop
Yeah.
doing that, and it's, you and I know because we're coaches, like that's not a good thought to have to keep telling yourself, right?
Right.
But for someone who's listening, like what would you say? Like how do we help them to overcome that feeling of embarrassment and shame? Like what's the first step to help them overcome that? Hey friend, can I give you permission today? Like for real, your own permission slip. Permission to get clear, to cut out the noise. Mostly the noise that is going on around in your own mind, in your own head. It's just swirling. And you're asking yourself questions like, why am I stuck? Why am I frustrated? Why am I not making progress on my goals? I want to invite you to a free clarity call with me where we're going to dive in and we're going to identify what are the three main issues that are keeping you stuck. Number two, what are the mindsets around those issues that are actually keeping you from solving for those issues? It's not our skill sets, it's our mindsets that keep us stuck and hold us back. And then number three, identifying what are your next steps? We all have a next step, and we have 100% responsibility for those next steps. Your only next step right now is to go to the show notes and book your free clarity call so that we can work through this. I'm believing in you, and I cannot wait to see you on our clarity call.
Well, let's start with what they usually say, right? Of like, I'm a grown woman. I should have learned this years ago. That right there shuts the door on change. It's a judgment. And even though it might come with like a, come on, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and let's go. Like, let's not wallow in this. It's actually a judgment at the core, and a judgment shuts anyone down. If like, this is why even like I have 2 dogs, so we do a lot of animal training, and this is why positive reinforcement takes you so much further than a judgment or negative reinforcement. So in this case, what I would say is, yes, you are a grown woman, and the universe is bringing this situation because you are meant to learn something here. This is your assignment. This is your task. And you can either continue to say, I should have already learned this. What's wrong with me? Try better, try harder, be better. Or you can lean in and be like, I've heard the message. I am open. I want this to change, and show me my next steps. And what that does is then it opens the door just a little bit. And that is when we can be guided to our next steps, whether it's an inspired thought or a course correct or a connection to support or even a billboard that we see while we're driving. The universe is abundant in how it brings you resources. But if you're telling yourself, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, this is stupid. I can't believe I'm still struggling with this. It's been 10 years. WTF. That's just going to shut everything down, yourself included. So one of the things that I also share with my clients is that our health and our bodies, this is something that is our responsibility from day one till the very last day. And I think we've also been sold or told that something or someone else outside of ourselves should tell us or should take care of us, or we try to like displace that responsibility. And through healing our relationship with food, we start to reclaim it and be like, wait a second, no one's going to do this for me. I have to do it. And that can come very dauntingly, right? Like, what the heck? But when we start to see the power and the freedom that comes, we start to take the driver's seat of our own life. We start to be advocates for ourselves. We start to say, you know what? I'm not going to settle. And it doesn't matter how long this takes me. I'm going to figure it out. And that was really my mindset when I first realized I was an emotional eater, is that I was so sick and tired of feeling sick and tired that I was like, as long as I know that this is possible, which I didn't at the time, but like, as long as I have just a glimmer of possibility, I don't care if I don't figure it out to my very last day. Like, I'm going to stay with this. And that's how committed I was to myself. And that's what made a lot of the bumps in the road easier to handle, because I didn't take them as a pass fail. I took them as an opportunity to reassure myself of my commitment to myself, and that like, I'm not going back. And I think that's also what has really continued for me to be free, is that more than ever, I'm so deeply committed to myself and making sure I have what I need, both physically and emotionally. Yeah, I just think that if we shut ourselves down and we tell ourselves no, well, that's exactly what we're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to say shoulding is shaming when we say I should have done this or I
Yeah.
should have been able, like you're shaming yourself immediately. And I don't know anyone that finds success or even progress when they're shaming themselves, right?
Yeah. Like nobody says, oh, I just ripped myself a new one and, then just tore through my to-do list and I feel so great. It's like, no, we're so busy beating ourselves up that we
Yeah.
don't even like get through half of the things that we need to get through. So
Yeah.
it can be a real self-sabotage to stop ourselves before we even get started.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the time that it will take. And I think we want things yesterday, right? Like we want the result yesterday. We don't want to go through the journey. And so part of the healing process is just settling into it and realizing that it is going to be a process and that you're deciding and committing because it's the decision. Like you had a decision to make when you realized what was going on. You could continue doing what you were doing, or you could decide to get better and get healed. And everyone has that decision. Like you said, no one's coming for you, right? No one's coming for me. We have to put in our own reps and put in the work. And that's the hard
Mhm.
part is to slow down, especially as ambitious women, to slow down, to be self-aware and to decide and commit to what we need to do. And commitment meaning like in the moment, you're going to feel like, yeah, I want to do this, but maybe 2 weeks down the road, that feeling goes away, right? But
Right.
like you said, like you were willing, like as long as it takes, I'm in this. I'm committed to doing this. And that's hard sometimes for people to get to. So was there something that just made that happen for you where you were just like, I'm committed. Like it's even if it takes, like you said, to the end, I'm going to figure this out.
Well, I think it wasn't like a one and done thing for
Mm-hmm.
me. It wasn't like just one day I made a decision and then, then I was floating on cloud nine. That commitment was, and it still is to this
Mm-hmm.
day. And now that commitment has really shifted to like my business and my
Mm-hmm.
mission. But I think it's helpful to talk about commitment as conditional commitment
Mm-hmm.
and unconditional commitment. And those are two very different things in where conditional commitment means you're only committed when it's easy,
Mm.
when you're good at it, and when you can predict the outcome,
Yeah.
right? That's like a false sense of commitment. And that's very conditional, meaning that when it gets hard and you're in the unknown and you don't know how it's going to turn out, you go into hiding. And that's
Mm-hmm.
actually when we need to show up the most, is when it's hard. We don't know what's going on and we don't know how this is all going to pan out. That's the time where there's the most magic and the
Mm-hmm.
most opportunity for transformation. So one of the things, I don't think I really realized I was doing it
Mm-hmm.
until, I look back now and I could see where there was unconditional commitment and kind of this like no matter what attitude,
Yeah.
like I was talking about, of like come hell or high water, I'm in,
Yeah.
because I know what it feels like to be an
Mm-hmm.
emotional eater. I know what that chaos feels like, and I will take anything but that.
Yeah.
So unconditional commitment means it doesn't matter what's going on the outside. It doesn't matter what the scale says. It doesn't matter what you ate last night. It doesn't matter what you're going to eat tonight. What
Mm-hmm.
matters is that you're putting one foot in front of the other and you're doing the exercises and you're showing up. And this goes for our relationship with food, but any skill that we want to build.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I'm not an emotional eater, I have a lot of time to do things I love, like really love. And one of those things is I got back into adult ballet classes.
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher, because I'm a high achiever, I want to get really good. And I asked her, like, I'm working on this thing and can you give me some feedback? So she gave me these like exercises that I have to do. I don't have to do. I choose to do. Let me
Right. Yeah.
rephrase that. So she gave them to me probably about a year ago. And I did really good for like the first 3 days, just like any other human. And then they fell away.
Yeah.
And then I had another private lesson with her and she's like, are you doing your exercises? And I'm like, no. And she's like, you got to do your exercises. So I get back on and I'm like, I'm going to do them every day. And then it fell off again. And then just recently, same thing. She was like, are you doing your exercises? And I was like, no. And I haven't done them in a really long time. And she was like, okay, well, you know what you need to do. So this time, to support myself in following through, I actually pulled a little tracker sheet that I often give my clients when they're building a new habit. And it has all these different like bubbles for the days
Mm-hmm.
of the week. And when I do my exercises, I fill in a bubble and I like
Mm-hmm.
put any notes in there that are helpful. And what do you know? I've stayed with doing the exercises. And even last night, after a long day, and I'm like changing to get in my PJs, I see the tracker on like my nightstand because if I see it, I'll do it.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's also about like knowing how you work best. So I see the tracker and I'm at that choice point of like, well, I could just like skip a day and like, and then I was like, well, that's what we've done before.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could just do the exercises because another way my mind will try to like intervene is it takes so much time. It'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, it takes so much time. And like, it's just so dramatic.
Yeah.
But a way to like cut through that is that I've timed myself and I know to a T, it takes me 5 minutes to do these exercises.
Mm.
So literally, as I'm changing into my PJs, I'm not wearing pants and I roll out my yoga mat and I do my exercises and I fill in that bubble and I go on with my day and my night. And I'm like, see, it really wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
So part of this is knowing how you work, right? And
Yeah.
where I said like having the tracker, I'm a very visual person. And I do this a lot with my clients is I'm like picking up on how they work best. Do they work best kinesthetically? Do they work best visually? Do they work best auditorily? And customizing things for them.
Yeah.
So they're having the least amount of resistance possible.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what we're talking about here in this conversation is just the ways we get in our own way. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where having support and accountability, like a coach,
Yeah.
can really help us minimize those hurdles and minimize the ways we try to sabotage ourselves.
Yeah.
And a willingness to do that, I think, is ultimately what commitment is a
Mm-hmm.
willingness to jump every hurdle or at least try to jump every hurdle and find new ways to hurdle, over and over and over and
Yeah.
over again until we reach our goal.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing that I know for sure is that healing our relationship with food, number one, it's not just about food. It's
Mm-hmm.
healing our relationship with ourselves at the core.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it opens and changes how we show up for work, how we show up for our family, how we show up in our life. This journey isn't about perfection. It's
Mm-hmm.
about embracing your authentic self and repairing that relationship because emotional eating is simply a rupturing in that relationship with yourself over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. I know people are writing down so many just good nuggets in that. I love the commitment, just the difference in the two. So thank you for going into detail on that and just making it tangible for people,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them to kind of see themselves, whether it's food or work or exercising. Again, you can plug in pretty much anything into this scenario, but for someone specific, kind of as we wrap up, for someone who's listening, who's specifically like, oh, I see this, like this is me, like this is where
Mm-hmm.
I'm at. What would you say her first step is? Because I don't know about you, but I feel like the first step is the hardest. It's the scariest one because we have to admit, like, there's a problem, right? There's
Yeah.
something happening that I'm not happy with. And then once you're aware of it, then you have to take action. So to help them decrease the resistance and to just take
Mm-hmm.
that first step, what would you suggest?
I would say reach out to me. That is honestly the best way. to take a step forward is
Mm-hmm.
to send me an email, send me a message, or go to my website. You'll see all the information on there. But the best step you can take at this point is reach out for help. And if it's not me, then it's some other expert in some other
Mm-hmm.
way. But this is not a time to ask for help from family and friends. They love you
Mm.
too much. They're going to
Yeah.
let you off the hook. This is not a time to try to absorb more information. You already know enough. It's
Mm.
time to do things differently and take different steps forward. So I would say the best thing that you can do is to reach out to me because I get it. I know it. I know the demons that you're probably wrestling with, and I know the ways that you'll try to wiggle out. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what good support and accountability is not about holding a tighter grip. It's about being able to anticipate the hurdles and
Mm-hmm.
already having a way prepared so you can jump them with a little bit more ease and a lot more sanity. So I would say again, the best way, especially if you've been trying to say, oh, this isn't that bad. I should be able to figure this out on my own. Reach out,
Yeah.
reach out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the fact is you don't have to do it alone. There's too much support out there for you, like you, Jessica. And I think we, especially as independent, strong women, we want to just figure it out on our own. And we think we can just figure it out on our own. And the fact is, if you could have done it alone, you would have already done it.
Right.
I mean,
And
you would have already done it.
some of the best women, like the women that we look up to, they have a team behind them, a
Right.
team of
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
and support specifically around their health,
Mm-hmm.
around like taking care of themselves. So it's also allowing yourself to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a practice that if we're resisting what we need, that's
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what keeps the
Mm-hmm.
emotional eating cycle, ensconced is just resisting what we know we need. So it's like stop playing that game and allow yourself to receive what it is that you really need because you deserve it. And nobody should have to live with chaos when it comes to their relationship with food. It would be like having chaos with our relationship with oxygen.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't have to be that way. So,
Mm.
yeah,
That's
allow
a good
yourself to
visual.
receive.
Yeah, I'm a visual person, so I'm just sitting there thinking, how would you wrestle with oxygen? That would be,
Yeah.
that would be a really chaotic life if I was having to, wrestle with oxygen. So that's a really great visual to end on. So where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about you and your services and how you can support them?
Yeah, so come on over to escapefromemotionaleating.com. That's
Okay.
escapefromemotionaleating.com. You'll see all sorts of goodies on my website, free resources. There'll also be information on there about how to work together. And before beginning any work together in any way, I always love to talk to people and have a free consultation and just like discover more. So we're really starting off. So there's more information about that on my website, but all things come from escapefromemotionaleating.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll put the link in the show notes to all of those places. And thank you again for coming on and just being vulnerable to share your own story. And I know so many people are going to be impacted from this episode and the work that you're doing. So I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap, friends. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope it met you right where you are and gave you some encouragement for your day. Could you do me the biggest favor and leave me a rating and review? Seriously, it's the best way for you to support the show. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. And until next time, I am believing in you always.